Hi, everybody. So some of you I know, others I don't. I'm not the reason you're here, they are, so I will keep this extremely brief and then we'll get into it. I work at Ichilov, Solaski, however you want to call it, Tel Aviv Medical Center for those abroad. One of the things under my purview is working with external startups to the hospital and basically defining all of the ways that we can collaborate. One of those is the accelerator program that was mentioned a second ago. So if you're a startup of any stage, feel free to reach out after. But I'm not the person who's relevant here. So let's start with Sascha. If you could give a brief 1-minute introduction of who you are, where you work, and we'll work on down the line, and then we'll get into it.
Well, thank you for being here. My name is Sascha. I'm a co-founding partner of 4051 Ventures. 4051 Ventures is a venture capital fund out of Switzerland, Basel. 50 million. We're focused on investments in the biotech sector. We do company creation, so every investment we do is literally companies that we do set up. We have 8 companies in our portfolio. I've been, before that, I've been with Roivant, I've been with Roche, so been in the industry pretty much 30 years. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Adina Krausz. I'm the CEO of InnoSource Ventures, which is the innovation department of a Swiss family office. We do value creation for startups. One of the verticals are healthcare. And yeah, I also came from Switzerland, so we met a couple of years ago already, so met here again. And yeah, I'm Israeli, born in Germany, and I'm happy to meet you later and answer your Q&As.
I'm Yahel, obviously Israeli by my name, but been living in Barcelona for the past 7 years, 6 of them with Nina Capital. It's a early stage venture capital firm investing in pre-seed seed startups that are solving needs of healthcare stakeholder across multiple countries, among others Israel, but also Europe broadly, US and Canada. Actually, we added now Australia as well because they have some interesting innovation. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, so we're going to get into it. Yahel, I'm going to start with you first. I want to talk about AI because everything is AI now, right? This is AI, that's AI, everything's AI. And AI now represents, I think, something like 50% of all healthcare investment. And what we're seeing when you look at the trends is that it's going more and more into a very small, concentrated group of startups. I think 40% of the money went into rounds that were over $300 million last year. So this raises a question that I want to ask you. Is this sector of health tech really experiencing genuine, real transformation, or are we in a bubble?
Bubble versus trend. I think it's both, actually. I'll start with our thesis and the fund because I think this is what drives my attention to, let's say, AI, bubble versus transformation kind of like concept. So for me, when I look at AI is technology. I want to see a company that uses it to enable transformation, to your point. So is AI a bubble right now? Yes, for those who invest in technology. I will not invest, and especially for health tech, which is where we're sitting right now, right? So health technology startups building AI solutions need to cater for very, very, very complex needs of the different stakeholders that are usually not aligned, right? I think everyone here in the room knows that the incentives in the healthcare systems are very, very difficult to solve. And to cater to that, you need a solution that will understand all the stakeholders map, align them. And this solution can be driven by AI or can be driven by other type of technologies, right? So for those who are enabled by AI, I think those cater better to health technology because there is first the stakeholder barriers that I mentioned, second the regulatory barrier that I think everyone is very well aware of, and this comes with the liability issue that you have building AI tools for healthcare, right? Because at the end, for generalist AI tools, building something, I don't know, what SaaS for value creation for companies, the value is very clear. You can see it very, very, very clearly. But at the end, if you're building the solution for a healthcare stakeholder and result and driver will be an impact on a patient, you carry a different liability. This is why I think that when it comes to looking at companies solving needs with AI for healthcare specifically, you carry the weight differently and you challenge it differently. So back to the bubble versus transformation. Yes, there is a bubble, but I think the bubble is concentrated in the generalist AI solutions rather than healthcare specific, because of the level of responsibility that carries every startups that are building AI solutions and AI tools specifically dedicated to healthcare stakeholders. That was a long answer to a very short question, but yeah.
Thank you. Adina, I'm moving on to you. So every startup here in Israel, everywhere, is always concerned about fundraising. At the same time, we have to be honest that not every startup is venture backable. Sometimes the reason is because there's a misalignment between the startup and their model and the actual financial model of the VC. You work in a different space on the funding spectrum. You work in family offices. How do family offices fit into this landscape? And what's the difference between a family office and a traditional VC?
Yes, okay, and I think this is a very interesting topic that I've been also speaking at different panels within Europe, because for some reason founders, it's a myth, they think that family offices substitute the VCs, so when the VCs don't invest, so you can go to family offices. I hear a lot of words like patient capital, and sometimes I'm thinking, do you think it's stupid capital or venture philanthropy? And there's a lot of misunderstanding of what family offices are. So I like to debunk that. And basically you have a single family office. Single family office is a investment institution, investment house of a founder or one family. Usually it should be above $1 billion to justify that operation. And they're making investments for this founder. So sometimes single family offices are more into tech investments or into startup investments, because sometimes the family or the founder made money from that and made an exit. And then you have multi-family offices, which is what we are as well. And that's really what in Hebrew you call nihul-tik, regular wealth management. And actually family offices, such family offices are way more conservative than VCs. VCs is risk capital. So they can take different risks than a family office can, and at the end of the year, the principals come to the wealth manager and say, so what is our yield this year? And that is actually very not aligned with what startups are and venture capitalists, but still everybody tries to get into family offices, and then I hear all the time, it's so difficult to find them, and even some VCs told me they're hiding like unicorns in the forest. And it's basically, in banking you always say, know your customer. And I think for founders it's very important, for startups very important, know your investor. And it doesn't help, I'm getting between 80 to 100 pitches a week, and through the family office, not even through InnoSource Ventures. And they, a lot of pre-seed, a lot of pre-seed biotech, very early stage, and that's not how it works. So we do invest, but late stage we want to see the return of investment on the horizon, as I call it. So it has to be de-risked. So we created roughly 10 years ago InnoSource Ventures to do value creation for startups. This way we see, through the work that we do, we see product market fit, operational excellence, and with a lead investor is actually de-risking or mitigating our own risk. And I think that's what every founder has to have in mind. A family office needs de-risk. And how attractive are you really for private investors? I think if you put yourself the glasses on of the investor, it's a little bit easier to get to the right ones.
Great, thank you. Sascha, I'm moving on to you. And I want to talk about your space because you specialize in the bio and pharma space. there's a lot of kind of murmurs about how there's not enough capital for the early stage of pharma innovation, both in Israel and in Europe. And specifically that stage of coming out of research and translating that to the initial clinical asset, which begs a question. Is this really the case? Do you think that Israel and Europe are truly undercapitalized, or are there simply not enough good things to invest in?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think in general, yes, there's not. I can mostly speak for Europe, but happy to also draw a few parallels to what I've seen in Israel, other parts of the world. In general, I think there clearly is a lack of VC capital available for biotech, particularly in that famous valley of death, meaning that early stage you get some money from incubators, sometimes from entrepreneurs, sometimes also from family offices, but that only takes you so far. And then you have the possibility, if you have something late stage, to also find funding, but in that sort of translational phase, it is enormously difficult. When you look at the statistics, and many of you will know this, in the US and also in Israel, per capita, per GDP, there's much, much more capital available than in Europe. Including in Switzerland, interesting enough. And then I've also been asking myself, why is this the case? And also how to change that. And I sort of see sort of 2, 3 themes evolving over time. And I think one is clearly, maybe this is obvious, but it's risk aversion. And I think risk aversion has to do, is basically happening on different levels. One is you're risk averse because you're fearing that you lose the money that you invest because you might not understand the market. But particularly what I also see in Europe, and we've gone through that in the fundraising of our fund, which we started 4 years ago, is also sort of this risks of certain perception. And I jokingly sometimes say that some people seem to prefer to lose money with good names than make monies with somebody that nobody knows. And I give you a few statistics, or a few anecdotes, I should say. Basel, for example, has 50% of GDP in Basel is actually coming from biotech and from pharma. Yet we've been, within almost 2 decades, the first venture capital fund that started itself in the city of Basel. In Switzerland, I've been at an event where there were 15 novel VCs pitching, 15, all industries you can imagine. But we were the only biotech fund. If you look then on a Swiss basis, and Adina will know this very well, you know, healthcare and biotech represent actually the largest portion of GDP. Everybody talks about chocolate and watches. That's minuscule if you compare it. So that is really something I think we're fighting. Now, going back to the first point, I do think there is in the industry, in the wider industry of biotech and also of pharma, a lack of communication on several levels. First of all, I think it is extremely difficult, and I'm not a scientist by the way, but I've been in the industry long enough to sort of understand, or I can see sort of both ends, that to explain all the things you have to go through in translational science to bring a molecule to the clinic is, yeah, I mean, without an end. It's enormously complex. But the wider scheme, I also see that if you want to go outside of the biotech bubble, meaning of those who are already invested and vetted in the space, there still is a certain stigma, I think, of making money with basically diseased patients or with illness. And I'm saying that because we are trying within Europe, and curious to see and you know how it is in Israel, but we're also trying to tap exactly what Adina said, you know, trying also to bring certain family offices or out, quote unquote, non-yet biotech pharma experts on board into the industry. But oftentimes my perception is, wonder if you share that view, besides wanting to make money, there's also a desire to be in a good industry. Now, if you look at the perception of the pharma and biotech space, actually, you look at the ratings, and the wider, if you go outside of those that already invest in it, it's actually pretty dire. You know, if you look at the Gallup ratings in the US and in Europe, it's really, I think the industry needs to improve its perception. And the last thing I say, and sorry for the long-winded answer, the last issue that I see is that in Europe, you have more and more very large funds, almost an oligopoly. And these large funds, to invest in that quote-unquote valley of death is difficult because they oftentimes have to put 20 million at work, which is too much for something early. And then you can maybe invest into a platform or something later stage. But in that space where we operate, which is sort of late preclinical, early clinical, is definitely a need to do more.
It also gives you an opportunity to own that space. So I'm going to open this up to questions for all of you, 2 questions, because we don't have a lot of time, and they're semi-controversial, but anyone can feel. So there's kind of 3 areas where I'm seeing a lot of buzz, right? Mental health, women's health, longevity, and that buzz is everything, right? There's FOMO, there's regulation, there's policy, there's a lot of questionable clinical legitimacy around it. What of these 3 areas do you think is the most overhyped and why?
I don't think there is hype around women's health. Can I say that?
Sure. You can, I agree.
There's no hype around women's health. That's first. Okay, I think women's health is the most underserved area of need within the healthcare system. Maybe it's battling with pediatrics, actually.
I agree.
But I think the hype is more about kind of like creating marketing hype rather than from investors, sadly. So I think there's a lot of marketing around women's health, but not actual demand in the investors' world, sadly. There are multiple reasons to that, but I do want to state that women's health is a really underserved area of need. Yeah. I think mental health, you said mental health and longevity. Well, longevity is everything now. So longevity is really hyped in my mind because people throw this word around multiple areas of need because it's basically reducing the load of the cost of care as you get older, right? And you can relate this to multiple areas of need within the healthcare space. So similar to AI, it's something that you can throw on your deck and say, I'm improving longevity, I'm improving AI. So from my perspective, it's very similar to the bubble of AI, right? Because it's something that you can claim for, but it's not really the need you're solving. So longevity is something that is important, obviously, but maybe for the founders in the room, what's the problem that you're actually solving? It's not really longevity, right?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, I agree on the women's health topic. And then even mental health, I mean, here in Israel, obviously, it became, in the last 3 years, a much more of a, well, 2.5 years, much more of a topic because mental health, yeah. And then obviously also in Europe and America, they speak about it, but I don't consider this a hype on the startup, on the financing. And longevity, of course, on the one hand, you have the hype like Brian Johnson, if everybody read about all his researches and everything, which, like, whatever, a bit with sugar. But, like, there's so much stuff on longevity, and I think longevity per se is nothing bad, and it's also not a hype. So then you have, like, these absolutely crazy things from, I don't know, like, I don't even want to give examples now, but where you, I don't know, put a head of one to that thing and thing. But longevity is a good thing, and it's healthy living, and we put a lot of stuff under longevity, and there is also longevity centers. I mean, we built one, like a walk-in clinic in Switzerland. I thought it was funny, you know. I looked like Top Gun. They put me this mask on, and I said, okay, so what's the what you're going to see? So it was a free trial, 300 franc. It would have cost half an hour. I said, what are the results? No, you have to do it at least 10 times, and then basically they put my breath in the same level like being on a mountain for 2,500 meters. There was nothing there. On the other hand, if you look in the UAE, for example, you're building a lot of longevity centers, and then we work with a sleep startup. That is longevity. That's important. So I think you can't really put it all into
I think the biggest differentiator is between, is it clinical or is it wellness? So to Adina's point, like sometimes it's very focused on wellness, and this is where you're like, okay, maybe this is hype, compared to something that actually carry a clinical outcome. that is key for making a value, creating value at the end of the line, right?
I think if I can say that one thing, what people have to have in mind with every startup, does it have a business opportunity? And then it can be wellness if there's money to make. And if longevity is very biotech, then it's again very, very long, like a long cycle. So I think that's the investment cycle here is a factor.
Yep. So this is going to be our final question. I'm going to ask each of you in 1, 2, 3 words the perception of European investors on the Israeli health tech ecosystem. 1 good thing, 1 bad thing. Who wants to start?
Happy to start. I think with regards to biotech, the good thing is I see a lot of much more friendliness towards risk, and that is on personal level, people that venture out, leave a fantastic job, and just, you know, try it in a startup. I think that is something really outstanding. And refreshing and impressive, and also the quality is, I think, goes without saying, is fantastic. The less maybe good thing, I think sometimes, I think biotech takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, which also comes back to the question of capital. And I think there I could, I could see room for improvement.
You were so much more political than me.
I think investors that have invested in Israel before October 7th, they continue to invest. Those who haven't are not going to start. I get a lot of questions, but what do you think now? Because we have this regish nechetut, I call it. We always feel like to find a reason why not, but I think I can, in all these years now, and I've been speaking a lot also in the news and in the media about the Israeli ecosystem, I can maybe count on my 5 fingers of investors who said they don't want to invest in Israel because of Israel or because of whatever happening in Israel. I see much more like respect for what's built here and for the capabilities and the resilience that the founders actually have. So I think we can, you know, continue to be proud of what we are really building here, and I think that's what's important, and not all the time think, you know, why not? Because really these investors. I had it once from a German investors who said something, and I was like, "Whoa, you're German. You should actually not say that. What you just said." And I asked him. I said, "Have you ever invested in Israel?" And he said, "No." So I allowed myself to say what I really think. That he should not be saying what he was saying. And but otherwise, I think there's a lot of respect for what's happening here in the ecosystem.
Well, I agree with Adina, but.
So
I need to top that, right? But she said everything. Okay, so I'll say something that is good and bad from a European perspective. So Israel is considered as a mini version of the US. Also the ACs prove it. But it's considered as a mini version of the US. So from one side, it has respect for like creating good ecosystem, good technologies, highly driven founders that are resilient, that are moving fast, that are growing fast. From the other side, it's considered as something that is catering to the US ecosystem. So when you come to Europe, they challenge whether you really understand their healthcare systems, where you really understand their needs that they're solving. And I'm talking from a health tech perspective, right? Because they assume that in Israel there is a good understanding of the US, but not a good understanding of the really fragmented landscape within Europe. So I think that's for the good and for the bad.
Perfect. So first of all, thank you all for joining us and listening. Thank the 3 of you for being patient with my questions. And that is it for now. Feel free to reach out, I don't know, to whoever to reach out to these people.